When it comes to Sonic 06, and I mean this as respectfully as possible, I don't really like talking about the game with you people anymore, honestly. Like, I just don't like talking about this game anymore because I feel like the whole discourse has been ruined, or more so hijacked, okay? But for the purposes of this topic, which has kind of gone mega viral, I feel like we have to talk about it, so we're gonna get into this right now, okay? Tails channel just reported on this. There was a official Sonic fan meeting in Indonesia. It was a Q&A panel that had Hoshino, Shun Nakamura, and Shigehara, basically people that have done big shit for Sonic. But we're mainly gonna focus on Nakamura because he's the most important person regarding this topic. But yes, there was a Q&A panel. And the part that's going viral is they asked Nakamura if Sonic Team would remake or remaster old Sonic games, mentioning like the adventure games, Heroes 06, things like that. And Nakamura himself, this is not a rumor or a leak, this is confirmed, he said this. Nakamura himself said he has previously said he personally wishes for the opportunity to remake Sonic 06. Remember, this is the director of Sonic 06, the same guy. He's still at Sonic Team. He was the producer for Sonic X Shadow Generations. He was also the producer for Forces. He also did level design on Unleashed. He worked on Adventure 1. He did development support for Heroes. So like he's been there for a good while. So naturally the toxic discourse ensued because again, they said they wanted to remake 06 at some point. So you must have expected some kind of toxic discourse. Some people want it to happen, some people don't. I've kind of made peace with the idea that if they do something like that, then it's not going to be made for me, aka like an actual fan of Sonic 06 in its purest form. Before there was any improved version or anything like that, it was just a game that had several good qualities and several bad qualities, right? It's not going to be designed with me in mind. And again, I don't like having this conversation with people on the internet because people don't really get it, okay? It's like with the whole P06 discourse, and again, I love P06. It's like my favorite 3D Sonic fan game, but people got mad at me because I didn't immediately prefer every single change that was made in P06, of which there were a lot, okay? I don't think it's a complete replacement for what the original game was trying to do. I see it as more of a reimagining of sorts. But the point is, when you recreate something that was not well received, you kind of have to make a decision, right? Are you remaking it for the people that liked it originally and just want a better version of that? Or are you remaking it to appease the people that didn't like it in the first place? And if you're doing the latter, then the people that liked it originally may not like every single change you make, and that's fine. That's a decision you made, right? That's a smart decision to make, actually. If you're remaking a game that, let's just say 95% of people didn't like and only 5% of people liked, and you say let's remake it to appease the 95%, you're appeasing the majority of people. That makes smart business sense, which is what I would expect Sega to do if they're remaking Sonic 06, is target the people that didn't like 06, because that's more people. Don't target the people that actually like the game. But as someone who liked the game, maybe even loved the game, I could see that it wouldn't be for me if they did a remake, because there's a kind of mentality that goes around, and it happened with P06 and it would happen with this remake as well, which is original thing was bad, therefore all change is good change. That's kind of the mentality that happens when you do something like that, right? So they're gonna be at liberty to just change whatever thing they feel like changing because, well, I mean, the original thing was 06, we can't make it worse, right? And that mentality going into the remake is not something that I would want to see. I would want them to actually respect the original source material and not be like, let's just change this for the sake of changing it, right? I don't even know what they would even keep. Like, what percent of things would they keep? You see, like with Heroes, right? Heroes was not a critically panned game. It was still a very decently received game. IGN gave it an 8 out of 10. Metacritic wise, it was in the early 70s, but so are most Sonic games. Now, of course, at the time which Heroes came out, that was a low point because SA1 and SA2 were critically acclaimed, and Sonic hadn't hit the lows of 06 in terms of critical scores. So at that point, Heroes was like a slump. But compared to the rest of the franchise, Heroes is not the worst in terms of reception, and it falls in line with the majority of 3D Sonic games that were polarizing, let's just say. But it was liked enough that if they do remake it, they would want to keep the core experience mostly the same. I see a Heroes remake maybe removing the 4 team requirement, probably redubbing it just because they feel like it, which would be annoying, but that's not really a gameplay thing, so that's not really something I want to get into, because changing voices, I mean, a mod could fix that, but core gameplay wise, I feel like they would at least be 80 to 90% faithful to the original. The most annoying change would obviously be increased automation, because they want to make it easier for the masses as opposed to like an early 2000s platformer. You would expect them to change maybe like the movement, because a lot of people had issue with the physics, even people that like the game. But with 06, I've noticed just from speaking to tons of Sonic fans that they don't feel the same about the game that I do, clearly. Because to me, the biggest issues with 06 was like the lack of polish, you know, like maybe the load times, the glitches, things bugging out. Those were the issues to me. Those are the major issues. But to a lot of other Sonic fans, they feel like the issues go beyond the general lack of polish, and it's like the fundamental core of what the game seems to be an issue to a lot of people. And if that's how you feel, and they're going to make the remake to appease that sentiment, then no, it's not gonna be for me, right? I get it. It's gonna be some complete change or reimagining, and as much as I'll be like, okay, cool, it's not for me, it's a great business decision though, now you gotta go against the Sonic fans who've attached themselves to P06, saying that we shouldn't remake 06 because it will go against P06, or P06 already exists and things like that. And then it's like, are you serious right now? Like, I feel like Sonic fans, they say these like weirdly dense things sometimes that kind of just annoy me. Like, I'll give you an example. I made a Sonic Generations Ultimate video before there was any announcement of a Sonic X Shadow Generations. And I was getting this kind of sentiment of, why are we re-releasing Generations? Like, that makes no sense. Like, what do you mean it makes no sense? It was critically acclaimed. One of the closest thing to critically acclaimed that Sonic has gone since SA2. And it wasn't on PlayStation 5, it wasn't on Series X, it wasn't even on Nintendo Switch. Of course we re-released Generations. Like, are you hearing yourself, right? But back onto the 06 topic, like, I don't understand how P06 would be a replacement for them remaking 06 when P06 is a fan remake that doesn't remake all of the content, right? Most of the content is not there. The hub worlds are not there, the story's not there, the majority of the levels besides the main levels are not there, all the town missions, like, there's so much that's not there. And I'm not saying that the one person making that game should be adding everything. It's a fan project, but I'm saying the idea, the notion that Sega shouldn't even try because there's a fan project, like, and again, Sonic fans, they don't really focus on graphics because a lot of them play on Nintendo, so they don't really know what goes on with graphics. But like, when 06 came out, it was pretty cutting edge graphically. It kind of stood out graphically. It was an early PS3 release, so it was there sitting next to Gears of War and all the other early 360 era releases in terms of like pushing the graphics from 6th gen to 7th gen. Growing up as a kid, like going from Heroes graphics to 06 graphics, it was a big jump. Sega used to care about graphics until they started dealing solely with Nintendo, or majorly dealing with Nintendo, let's just say. So to be like, we have P06, we shouldn't remake 06, like, P06 is designed off of the same textures as 06, albeit AI upscale textures of the 06 textures, but still the same textures. If Sega was to actually remake 06, let's just throw a year out there, let's just say 2030 they finally get around to doing it, in the PS6 generation, do you really think it's going to be using the same textures from 2006, or do you think they're going to actually recreate it in a way that looks modern for the time, and actually like cutting edge photorealistic? Assuming they maintain the same art style, maybe they don't. This is another thing, we don't know what they're gonna change. But if it comes out, say 2030, it's not going to look like you just ported the textures from the 360 era into like Unity and maybe upscale the textures. Like when you see these stage mods, right? Like if you port Westopolis into Shadow Generations, it's not going to look like a modern day Westopolis. It's going to look like a PS2 game, but with slightly better graphics. So this whole mentality that it makes no sense to do it because someone's already attempted to do it, I don't understand that, okay? But again, that's kind of what I mean by I don't like talking about this game online anymore because everyone's ruined the discourse. It's like before, when you were talking about 06, you're really just talking about it to people that gave a fuck about the game. Now people just don't even play the game. They've just played P06 and then they use that information as if it applies to the regular game. Like, it's not the same thing, right? Just because you played P06 doesn't mean you played 06. You can't say you love 06 when you never played 06. It's two different things. There's so much difference in the gameplay and the movement and everything that you can't really say one is the same as the other. Even going from 06 on PS3 to playing it on Xenia, the emulator, is a completely different experience because the load times are completely cut. But the point I'm trying to make is that I can't even predict what game we would get with this potential 06 remake, and that's why I wouldn't be like super excited for it. I mean, the inner graphics slot in me would just want to see what it looks like, to see how good they could make the levels look. I mean, as someone who saw like Kingdom Valley and Rail Canyon and Shadow Generations, it looked beautiful. It really did, like visually. Would they even keep the same models? Like, my favorite Sonic models ever are in 06. Like the design for Sonic, the design for Shadow, even Eggman's design, which was controversial. I loved the Eggman design in 06. They wouldn't keep that, would they? Because everyone thought it was a bad design. Everyone critiqued the design. They said Eggman's not Eggy anymore. You know, like, so again, when they're remaking this thing, they're gonna be like, how much things do we have to change to get people who hated this thing to now say this thing is good? And that's going to be the mantra that they're going to have when they're making this thing. Will it even still be adventure gameplay? Will they just make it a boost game? I don't know. I really don't know the limits of how far they'll go to appease those who didn't like the game that they're remaking. And I know this is the internet and this is premydaremy, so people are gonna take this as me being a hater or critiquing something that doesn't exist yet. But again, like, I'm not really fussed, okay? As much as I'm saying this thing will not be for me, if it works out for them and it reviews well, then I mean, it's a good business decision. Like, more power to them. If they remake it and they redeem the reception of it, I mean, that's just good PR for Sonic, and I'm here for that. But if you're asking me personally, like, I don't think what they do is going to be made with me in mind. And for that means I'm not going to be super invested in it. At least not the way I'd be invested in the Heroes remake, personally. And maybe these things would have bothered me a lot more in the past, but the way things are going, especially with decompilations, I really do feel like we're gonna get that pure 06 experience through a decompilation at some point, and then we can like use that to build upon it and create the definitive version in my eyes, okay? Not in your eyes. It's a subjective thing, obviously. For me, a definitive version has to be something that's like truly faithful, right? So like Sonic 3 Air is built off the original ROM, so like when I play Sonic 3 Air, that to me, that's the definitive version of Sonic 3. Like, I don't have to boot up a Sega Genesis emulator to play Sonic 3 when I could just play Sonic 3 Air. I don't feel that way about P06. I see it as a reimagining. I don't see it as a faithful recreation. I mean, it's not like it's completely 100% different. Obviously, there's a lot of things are the same, but it only takes a certain amount of percent of difference for it to be a different experience entirely, right? It's something that I play and enjoy, but alongside the original, not in place of. And I get that that makes no sense to anyone who did not like the original. It's like, why would you say that? But again, that's why I don't like having this conversation, because you just won't get it. It's cool. The majority of remakes in general just tend to lose certain nuanced elements of an original game when they recreate the games. That's just how it is. And people that play the originals will notice these things. The only time this doesn't happen is when the people remaking are so like meticulously aware and they try their hardest to like recreate things perfectly. Like, you know, the Mania devs trying to get the classic physics just right, you know, like they really cared about that shit. It's not like when Sonic Team did Sonic Generations and classic Sonic's physics in Generations were just not accurate to the classics. To them, classic Sonic was a thing that was popular and they were bringing it back, so they brought it back. To the Mania devs, the classic Sonic physics was like, we need to get this exactly the way it was. And they got like 99% of the way there. And that was not easy. But to want to do that means you have to really care about the original elements and what was there and what you want to keep and what you want to change and what worked. And most people don't care. When it comes to 06, they just don't, okay? If this was like an SA1 or SA2 remake, you'd see a bunch of hardcore, passionate adventure fans talking about how pure it needs to be and how they have to maintain the experience. All of a sudden, then they'd get why not all change is good change. They're not gonna give that same grace to 06. They don't give a fuck. It's like, change everything. But yeah, again, it's just so hard to have this conversation because you're basically talking to a bunch of people that don't even like the thing, telling you how you should feel about the thing, right? It would be like if Sonic Colors got an unfaithful remake by Sega and they made the whole thing fully 3D and they made the story completely different and not cringe and they put in the voice actors that I like the most or whatever, and I loved it. Let's say they made a Colors reimagining and I thought it was amazing. I was like, this is way better than the original. original, and I couldn't see why the original Colors fans were upset. You know, the ones who grew up with the game and played it the way it was and fell in love with the level design and the things the way it was. And I'm sitting there playing the new version that's like fully 3D, wispless or whatever, I don't know. And I'm like, why don't you guys prefer this version? What's wrong with you? It's like, you know, I don't know what you want me to say. Like, I'm happy for whichever version you prefer. Like, in the case of 06, if we're comparing, say, 06 on console to 06 on emulator with maybe even certain mods or codes to like improve certain things, to P06 to this potential remake, like, play whichever version is the version you like. But this whole mentality that everyone must think the same way, I think, again, it's just typical when it comes to Sonic fans in general. Like, no one's allowed to think outside of the pack, otherwise, you know, bad. But yeah, personally, I wouldn't be getting my hopes up for this thing when they do eventually do it. And I say when because, like, him saying he wants to do it, they're probably gonna let him do it at some point. I don't know. After they've gone through everything else that's safer, after they've probably done the Heroes remake, after they've done like the adventure games, after Unleashed has gone a re-release, they might take that risk at some point. You know, it probably won't be a main series release. They'll probably have their Frontiers 2 and their Frontiers 3 or whatever they call it. But during one of those off years, they might try this thing and see what happens. I mean, it's safer than making Adventure 3, let's face it. The title Adventure 3 alone is just so risky. But 06 remake, that's less risky than Adventure 3 because people are going to be going in like it's 06, right? As long as it's like at least a B tier, people are going to be like, well, that's better, you know, charge like $40 for it, like don't make it too expensive, like, you know, include all the DLC, like, you know, they could pull it off and have it not be a complete train wreck, you know. But yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on that topic. Yeah, again, I don't really feel like talking about 06 on the internet anymore. I'm kind of over that. Besides, we got bigger things to worry about if this Heroes remake is really happening next year. I mean, that shit's actually gonna piss me off if they fuck it up. Like 06, like I've kind of mentally written it off in terms of like the game and what they're gonna do with it. But Heroes is like my heart. Like Heroes is my actual heart. You know, like that shit is like, what do they say in the boys? That shit is mon coeur. Like, you know, like don't fuck up my baby. Okay, 06, like, look, I love it, but it's hard to say don't fuck it up when you released it in the state you did. So, you know, like, you know, I'm sorry, but Heroes is my baby. That shit means some shit to me, okay? But I guess it is kind of an interesting point because we saw how much they changed with Sonic Generations. They mainly just changed the story and redid the cutscenes, or at least the dialogue. How much they do change with this potential Heroes remake will let me know how much they plan on changing with the 06 potential remake. Because if the Heroes remake happens and they change like 50% of it, which is a lot, then they're gonna change like 80% on the 06 remake. But if they only change like 10 to maybe 20% of things in the Heroes remake, then maybe the 06 remake will be like 40 to 50%, I don't know. But whatever the Heroes remake changes are, given that it's a more liked game, they're gonna tread more lightly. It means with the 06 remake, they're gonna tread well heavily, basically. So we have to use that to infer and like extrapolate to how far they're gonna go for a game that's as panned as 06 was, okay? I just really don't believe they're gonna just go in and just recreate the game super faithfully and just change minor things like the kiss scene or whatever. They're gonna go in, they're gonna just like everything from scratch, basically. Just keep the aesthetics of the level, basically. Don't even keep the models, don't even keep the VAs, don't even keep the gameplay structure in the loop and all that. They'll just gut it, basically. That shit will probably be unrecognizable. It's kind of like how eggs are an ingredient in cake, but cake and eggs don't taste the same, right? Like once they take the ingredients out and just put it in a different order, it's not even the same thing anymore. But it is what it is, man. I think, you know, we're definitely in that multimedia era where the movies definitely can dictate the direction of the franchise, and with them saying they got huge plans for Silver, and obviously they got huge plans for Shadow, talking about Shadow might even get his own movie, not even just a spin-off show. Like, to bring back Shadow and Silver, I mean, it does seem like the perfect opportunity to be like 06 remake and use that and be like, we got a great movie 4 and then we got an 06 remake alongside it or something like that. I don't know, like, I mean, the cards could line up for it to work, you know, and I really hope they do pull it off in terms of public perception, in terms of critical reception. Even if it's not for me, like, I'd just be happy to see it just like succeed and be like they righted a wrong that's at that point, you know, 20 plus years old. I mean, it'll be a cool story. But yeah, man, that's all I have to say right now. So, the Remy out.